fear. When we read the gospel, a lot of times you read it, and Barbie probably relates to this, you read it and you say, the gospel of the Lord, and you're like, yeah, that was gospel, that was good news. But what she just read didn't sound like a lot of good news to me. It sounded pretty scary. And it's a part of a 2-chapter portion of Matthew called the Apocalyptic Discourse. And Matthew has in those chapters all of the things that Jesus said, many, many of them, about what the future held. And it's scary. He's talking about the blood, the moon turning to blood, destruction, earthquakes, rumors of war. And then you heard this portion of Matthew 26 where he says, stay awake, therefore. Be alert. Fear is really good at keeping us alert. I don't know about you, but fear works for me. If I'm afraid, I got my eyes open and I'm ready. Is that what Jesus was calling us to be afraid? To be afraid of the future? To be ever vigilant with anxiety? So much so that maybe we don't even sleep at night for fear that someone's going to break in? Is that what's being taught to us here? Howard Thurman offers some incredibly simple and profound truth about fear. First off, he names that poverty and people who are disinherited know fear better than anybody else because there's more to be afraid of, right? You have so little resources in a world with so many opportunities to abuse. That's poverty. Jesus was born into that world, born into a family with so little and so much to fear. So how do we grasp the meaning and the truth of how to move past fear? As I've been thinking about this, one of the things that really strikes me is this metaphor of seeing. Keep awake, watch, keep those eyes open. And if it's not fear that's going to help us do that, what is? Thurman talks about how fear shapes us, especially the fear we can't control. Like if you know that you're in a fight with somebody and you're a boxer and you're going to get out in the ring and you're going to box, that's a certain kind of fear, right? It's an anticipation, but you've got power. You have equal power with that person you're going to box with. But when you're poor, when the justice system is rigged not in your favor, when there are aspects of life where people are going to scorn you just because you dress the way you dress, it changes everything. It changes the equation about how fear looks. If your skin color is going to change the way you interact with a sales clerk, it changes everything. So I was in India back in 1990, which is eons ago. I'm sure India has changed since 1990. But one of the things that I experienced there was I was in a relatively rural area, and I was told very strongly that if you are a woman, you do not make eye contact with men when you are walking around. My training immediately was, don't you look up, don't you, you see a man coming, you get your eyes on the ground. Apparently, straight up eye contact was very sexually provocative. That's what we were taught. Do you know how long it took me to figure out how to keep my eyes on the ground? I got really good at it instantly. It was like I had to do that for fear. There wasn't a real fear. It wasn't like I would immediately have the eyeball police coming after me, but the fear, just the thought of it, trained my body. Just the thought of fear trains us the way we interact with one another. Our sense of who we are, after a while, becomes modified. Immediately, you keep your eyes down when you're walking around whenever you see someone. Guess what you're learning? Who's got the power? Who has the control? What is your worth in comparison with that person? This is not equal. Some of us can drive through parts of the city and we can pay no mind to where we are because we have a certain level of status anywhere we go. And other people are very mindful of their status. That is a kind of latent fear that is embedded in us by the system. The systems, the culture. Jesus had this too. So how did he how did he bring good news? How did he bring good news to people when he was also telling them the future's not going to be any better than the present, right? The future is going to be tough. Until I come back, it's not going to be easy. How did he break that? How did he open us so that we do have good news? So I thought, if I were guessing, I'd say the antidote to fear is faith. But it's not. The antidote to fear, certainly relationship with Jesus. But what Thurman argues, and the more I sit with this seems absolutely true. Jesus did not tell people just trust and believe in God. Just sing kumbaya on the cross, all will be well. Jesus came and said, look, you matter. The number of hairs on your head are known to God. You are a child of God. Jesus restored people's identity, named for them who they are. Yeah, you might not be allowed to lift your head around a Roman soldier for fear of having it chopped off. That is not your truth. Your truth is you are a child of God. You can stand in that reality and claim it. That does change things, doesn't it? It changes things to know that the very thing that is bringing persecution on you, but is who you are, is still valued. It changes your heart. And it also changes how you see other people. We're all afraid of dying. Dying's scary. Fear of dying becomes this formative thing for us. But what happens when you realize that who you are and what you do, even if it kills you, has value and worth? That your death is not the very worst thing. The very worst thing is having to sublimate who you are in relation to God, having to change your loves, change your behaviors, to capitulate to a system that doesn't care about you a bit. Are you with me? You see where we're going here? Your identity does not belong in this world. If you are older and all you see are messages that your worth is the past when you were young and beautiful, that's garbage. Who you are right now matters to God. Regardless of what the culture says, do not be afraid. So that is fundamental. That changed Dr. Martin Luther King. He read this. He read Matthew 20, where Jesus says, "Consider the lilies of the field. Do not worry for your life. You are worth more than a sparrow." And he realized the power of that, of acknowledging that his relationship to God, even his death, was in the hands of God, and the meaning of life was standing strong. Standing with boldness for what is right. And so when he sang that favorite hymn of his eye is on the sparrow and I know he watches me, it wasn't just a sweet song. It was an anthem to his allegiance to God and God's allegiance to him. So in Romans it talks about put on the full armor of God. Put on the armor of light, it says. And that armor is about that affiliation. It's moving from where we've been in the past of not claiming our dignity and being afraid and claiming it by putting on the armor. So armor is a defensive thing, right? It's not like you're putting that on so that you can be aggressive. It's to protect your own sense of self. And it's also, armor always said what army you were with. And so this armor tells the world, I am a child of God. How we see other people then changes too, right? If you have been in a situation where you couldn't look somebody in the eye and you start doing it, you're changing the dynamic. Howard Thurman argues that that is a level of objectivity, that suddenly we get a step back from fear and we're able to see reality more clearly and our relationship to other people. This is a kingdom shift, my friends, a kingdom shift. When we know who we are, when we know who others are, we start seeing the world in different ways, and we start seeing our own capacity. I had never thought about this before, how fear in so many ways is identity killing. It brings us in, it locks us in. But our relationship to Jesus Christ, our relationship to our Creator, is about opening us up to who we really are, allowing us to be those people in relationship to Jesus and to claim love and truth and goodness. So this way of seeing the world changes things. It changes us, it changes our relationships, and it enables us to cultivate who we really were meant to be, our gifts, our talents, instead of sublimation. Now, most of us sitting in this room do not really have an experience of that level of poverty, that level of oppression where this resonates at a very visceral level as liberating good news. But we all have places in our lives where this can be true. And so let's claim it and walk in it in our identity. Let's see ourselves as belonging to God no matter what happens, and that we will be equipped when that bad time comes through this identity, not in spite of it. So when my father died years ago, and he taught me a lot about how to see the world. But I never thought that he would leave behind such a tangible example of his love and such a perfect metaphor in a lot of ways for what it means to see through our belovedness. One day I was at home. We moved my office to my house, which is a block away, and I'd lost my glasses. I know you're surprised. I lost my glasses. And my dad's glasses were on the shelf. They were readers, and I put them on. I just thought, you never know. And lo and behold, these glasses work perfectly for me. You're going to see them in a minute, and if you've been here before, you've seen them before. I look at the world, I look at worship through my Father's eyes, through those glasses. And it's a tangible reminder to me of what it means to own our belovedness and to walk in confidence and faith, knowing that we don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future.